It better not be guarding Cisco. We're going to be in trouble. I got a minute to get up, and he's not even over there. Nobody's sitting down there yet. No, well, his is warm. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Check, 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 check. mic, otherwise I don't know. It's gonna be really weird. It's harder to share a mic because you have to have it right in your mouth, and that's going to look awfully funny. It's not like sharing a stick mic. Do we have her mic? So no Jessica at first? Okay. Good evening. 1 hour now until the government is set to shut down. If is it really going to happen? It is going to happen because senators have already gone home for the night. And yes, it is going to affect you. The question is how much it is going to affect you. Jessica Janocaster here going to fill in some of those, some of the storylines there in a moment for us. But how did we get here and who's at fault? King 5's Drew Mickelson takes a look at that part of the story tonight.
If there's a federal government shutdown, the mail will still be delivered. Social security checks will still be cut. Their offices, like the one here in Lacey, will remain open for most appointments. But there are 80,000 federal employees in the state of Washington who could be laid off or have their paychecks delayed. We've been through this before. The last federal government shutdown closed Mount Rainier National Park in 2019. Park rangers were furloughed along with non-governmental employees who worked at the hotels and restaurants at Rainier. If there's another shutdown, SeaTac does not expect an impact on travelers. TSA agents would still be required to work, although they wouldn't get paid until the shutdown is over. Members of the military won't be laid off, but it's not clear what would happen to the thousands of civilian employees who work on base. Veterans would still receive medical care at VA facilities like the hospital at American Lake, but regional offices would be closed and career counseling programs canceled. A spokesperson for the VA says the blame should go to Democrats. Quote, radical liberals in Congress are trying to shut down the government to achieve their crazy fantasy of open borders, transgender for everybody, and men competing in women's sports. If they succeed, they will stop critical veterans care and assistance programs. Members of Congress are blaming their colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
Just a number of the Democrat base just have not accepted that President Trump was elected by the American people and returned to the White House. And they're frustrated by that fact. And so they're going to shut down the government to demonstrate to their base that they care as well.
In the last shutdown in 2019, the TSA did report an increase of employees calling in sick at airports, but SeaTac officials do not expect any longer wait times. As always, they're advising folks get to the airport at least 2 hours before their flights. This year, they're also encouraging folks to be a little bit nicer to those TSA agents who may not get paid for a while. In Lacey, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
So if you are listening in right now, and I'm getting we are working on some audio issues we're clearly dealing with right now and open mics as we're trying to work through all of this. Part of our refinement as we move from TV to much more of as I'm getting an echo in my head, it's much easier to do it this way. As we're moving from the TV world to the linear world, learning how to get all this figured out. So we are working on that, but we do want to bring you a couple things and kind of give you an idea of what's expected to happen, how you might be impacted by this. And I'll bring in Jessica now to talk a little bit about kind of how we got here, because this comes down to competing budgets from senators, and they just could not come to any agreement. And the last time this happened, this is why it's a big deal, was 2018 when during President Trump's first term, right over the Christmas holiday. What would you like to film from there? I'm going to share mics right now because we're down to one.
Yeah, we are down to one mic. And it's interesting, Greg, that you're saying, this is really unusual for us, not only sharing the mic, but being here in the newsroom. But we're bringing this to you because, yeah, we haven't seen something like this happen in 7 years, right? So government shutdown, not something that we typically deal with. This is going to happen. It's going to happen in an hour. The last time we saw this, as you mentioned, was 2018 into 2019. It started at the beginning, at the end of December of 2018, lasted until about the end of January 2019. It was 35 days. It's the longest shutdown we've seen.
Days.
Yeah, in government history. So obviously everyone hoping that that does not happen again. And last week we thought perhaps that there could be some wiggle room, that they would come to some sort of consensus. But then, as of yesterday, this morning, it really felt like, no, this is not going to happen. Then today we saw them vote 55 to 45 to expand federal funding by about 7 weeks. That fell short. They needed the 60 votes to end the filibuster and pass that legislation. The Republicans, Democrats, though, sticking to their guns. They want their healthcare demands met, and that has been their biggest sticking point, as we have been reporting on our newscasts. And they have decided, nope, we are going to shut the government down.
Well, a lot of pressure from constituents as well to basically say, hey, hold your ground on this one. And that's where a lot of us were like, well, what's going to happen with this? And we've been watching this and waiting to see how it unfolds. But that's where we are tonight.
Yes, that is where we are. The government will shut down. And we want to compare some things to what we saw in 2019. I have a few notes here. When we saw 2018 to 2019, that government shutdown, what we saw was non-essential services that were closed, but essential services stayed open. So you might be wondering, what are non-essential services? That would include a lot of federal agencies that would just have to shut their doors, agencies like the EPA, HUD, IRS, although they kept sending out tax refunds, we should note that, and then parts of the Commerce and Interior Department workers were sent home. NASA would continue to operate if 2019 is any indication, and then essential services, so that would be including like the military, TSA, Border Patrol, air traffic control, and federal prisons. So you and I were chatting offline that this doesn't necessarily just shut things down in one day. We don't see necessarily huge impacts the following day. This happens gradually and slowly, but the essential services will remain open.
You talked about something earlier about 2019 when all the garbage started piling up at the parks, which a lot of us don't tend to think about. If there's anything we learned from then, this will be a slow rollout. So you have a little happen here, a little happen there. Politics comes to play, and then we'll figure out, is it going to be a few days? Is it going to be a couple weeks? And how quickly can they come together? How much pressure will build in those days, in those weeks to get things back under control? But
absolutely, and obviously the longer a government shutdown goes on, the more impacts we start feeling. You mentioned the parks, and let me give our viewers a little bit of context there. In 2019, because National Park Services are closed. Essentially, they don't pick up the trash. They don't maintain the parks. What we saw, or something that was very vivid in my memory from that 2019 shutdown, was the images of trash piling up at national parks. That would include places like Mount Rainier. So that is something that we would see only gradually over time, obviously, because, as time moves on and trash is not getting picked up, that's where we see some of those impacts. Also want to give some context to what happened in 2019. That shutdown, we saw about 800,000 federal employees affected. About 380,000 were furloughed. About 420,000 had to keep working. But one thing that often is overlooked is some of these employees that continue to work, they are not gathering a paycheck. They'll get paid later. But that can obviously cause a big financial strain for folks as they get their payments delayed.
And one of the things that may be a little different here is that we heard from the president, who said if this goes on and this happens, federal employees, a lot of them will be just fired, outright fired, but there's been no number. How would that work? How many people would that affect? We don't know at this point. So that's a bit of a deviation from the last time around.
That has certainly made headlines, and I think the president perhaps and Republicans hoping that would push Democrats to be able to negotiate and not hold firm on this government shutdown. But obviously we are nearing the deadline here. I don't even know what time it is right now, but in
51 minutes
in
and 15
51
seconds.
minutes. So So yeah, that was something that we have reported on, but exactly, we don't know the exact numbers of how many people could potentially face a layoff if this government shutdown is prolonged. We have also seen periods in the past where we have had a funding gap, but not a government shutdown. Because probably some people at home are wondering, oh, well, we've talked about a government shutting down so many times. Right. We have these funding gaps, but Congress has been able to work quickly within just a few days, and then we don't really feel an impact.
But at this point, and I'll take this from you because I know you have a show to get ready for, at this point, they've already gone that route and looked at that, and there's just such a huge divide between the parties at this point. This is where we are. And I know a lot of you out there are asking that, well, again, what does this really mean to me? CNN put something together, not just what it means to you for your experiences, but really how it might hit your wallet.
The most recent U.S. government shutdown was back in 2018, and that was also the longest in history at 35 days. But if the government runs out of funding at midnight, this particular shutdown could do more damage to the economy, especially the unsteady labor market. In the recent past, a shutdown of the federal government hasn't put too much of a long-term dent in the overall U.S. economy.
The reality is that it would not typically have a lasting impact on the economy, but it can be extremely detrimental for individuals.
Those individuals, typically government workers, furloughed without pay until the shutdown ends. But with a sputtering labor market, Mark Hamrick, senior economic analyst at Bankrate, warns this time it could be different.
This is a precarious time, and in some ways, given the fact that the U.S. economy has been seen currently or recently at an inflection point, having the lack of visibility on the job market is extremely inopportune.
A government shutdown would delay the release of the Labor Department's monthly jobs report this upcoming Friday, which informs economists, businesses, and even the Federal Reserve about the state of the economy. Laura Ulrich, director of economic research for Indeed, says adding more uncertainty could further slow the economic engine.
We certainly see that when times are uncertain, people have a harder time making decisions. So that slows down economic activity that we see amongst consumers, but also amongst businesses. And so this is just one more thing to add to that list of items that are making the economy a bit uncertain at this point.
Potentially keeping the jobs market stuck. The Trump administration also warning there could be permanent cuts to the federal workforce if a shutdown occurs, putting more job hunters on the market. And with Friday's scheduled monthly jobs report release up in the air, economists really honed in on a piece of government jobs data released on Tuesday. Numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics showed little change in job openings and hiring during the month of August, and that's a sign of narrowing opportunities for Americans who are looking for work. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
So we've got broader strokes there. What does it mean for this country as a whole and how it might impact you financially? That's one part of this. What about you here at home in the Northwest, in Washington State? Could be a little bit different. King Fest Jake Wittenberg has a closer look at that tonight.
The last government shutdown was in December of 2018. It was 35 days during President Trump's first term. And in case you don't remember, here's how a shutdown could affect you. First, non-essential employees could be furloughed. That would affect areas like national parks, customer service, and food inspections. It could also lead to a freeze or possible cuts when it comes to federal grants and money funding these federal programs. Not only would that impact education, housing programs, and research, it could lead to job cuts in the end. While travel delays are not especially possible during this shutdown, airport delays could happen. The FAA and TSA both define employees as essential, so they have to show up to work even if a shutdown happens. That means airport screeners, air traffic controllers, federal air marshals, safety inspectors, and other workers have to continue showing up at the airport, but would not be receiving a paycheck. But if a shutdown lasts too long, things could change. During the last shutdown, 10% of TSA workers called in sick, which drove up screening times across the country. And even if a shutdown does happen, Social Security payments to senior citizens and other Americans will still continue. The SSA is also keeping application processes and appeals programs going. Just some internal functions will not be available during a shutdown. We'll be following, of course, what happens throughout the day in Washington and keep you updated on what Congress may decide to come up with a funding deal. We'll track impacts hour by hour.
So that is a bit of what we know at this hour. Again, the government set to shut down in 44 minutes, 15 seconds, right at 9 o'clock Pacific time. We will have much more for you right here, starting at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock on King 5 News. We hope you join us.